Hola, mis amigos. Buenos dias. My name is Stephen Golding. I'm the president of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League in Jamaica. A professor of Garveyism at the university level, I'm also the chairman of the African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica, as well as a member of the Jamaica National Council on Reparations. I do want to thank the Embassy of Jamaica in Caracas, as well as the National Council for the Development of Afro-Descendant Communities of Venezuela for this opportunity to speak about the political philosophy of Marcus Garvey as seminal to the reparations movement. The organization that Marcus Garvey founded in Jamaica in 1914 became the largest Pan-African organization in the history of man. In 1920, Garvey called the largest convention of Negro peoples of the world in New York City, bringing delegates representing over 12.5 million members of the race scattered across the globe. This was a key event in articulating and expounding on the issue not only of reparations but also of repatriation. At that convention, a Declaration of Rights of the Negro people of the world was declared with 54 points, one of them claiming the inherent right of the Negro people to claim Africa. It also called for free education for their generations and their posterity forever, as well as the right to travel across the world unmolested. How does this figure into reparations? Garvey was key after World War I to highlight the fact that many Africans died on the battlefields of Europe defending the flags and nations of Europe. He called for reparatory justice in the form of asking the newly formed League of Nations in 1919 to hand over to the UNIA, on behalf of the African descendant people of the world, the colonies that were taken from Europe following their defeat in World War I. These included countries now known today such as Rwanda, Tanzania, Namibia, Togo, Cameroon, and other German colonial holdings on the continent of Africa. This was the first organized move by Africans and African descendants worldwide in claiming reparations from Europe. Very important. In his philosophies and opinions, Marcus Garvey wrote a dissertation which was entitled An Appeal to the Soul of White America. In it, he begins by saying, "It is true that the glamour of materialism has to a great degree destroyed the innocence and purity of the national conscience. But still beyond our politics, beyond our soulless industrialism, there is a deep feeling of human sympathy that touches the soul of white America, upon which the unfortunate and sorrowful can always depend for sympathy, help, and action. It is to that feeling that I appeal for 400 million Negroes of the world and 15 millions of America in particular. There is no real white man in America who does not desire a solution of the Negro problem. Each thoughtful citizen has probably his own idea of how the vexed question of races should be settled. To some, the Negro could be gotten rid of by wholesale butchery, by lynching, by economic starvation, by a return to slavery and legalized oppression, while others would have the problem solved by seeing the race all herded together and kept somewhere among themselves. But a few, those in whom they have an interest, should be allowed to live around as the wards of a mistaken philanthropy. Yet none so generous as to desire to see the Negro elevated to a standard of real progress and prosperity, welded into a homogeneous whole, creating of themselves a mighty nation with proper systems of government, civilization, and culture to mark them admissible to the fraternities of nations and races without disadvantage. Garvey's call for reparation came in the fact that he advocated for the establishment of independent African governments. Indeed, he called for the establishment of an African empire on the continent of Africa, strong enough to lend its protection to African citizens wherever they might be in the world. Not only did his convention on the rights of Negro people of the world articulate clearly what was being requested in terms of respect for the race, respect for their representatives, and respect for their rights as Africans, their identity as Africans, and their claim to the African continent. But Garvey followed up by presenting this to the League of Nations in 1922 and a second petition in 1928, again highlighting the fact that many black people had sacrificed their lives in the cause of Europe in World War I. It also highlighted the fact that for over 300 years, Africans were brutalized through the transatlantic slave trade, were scattered throughout the globe by the nations of Europe, and that due compensation was just, calling for reparatory justice in the form of Europe and America working together to recognize the claim of Africans as free citizens of the world and their inherent claim to the continent of their ancestors. Garvey called on the League of Nations to recognize his organization, to recognize their representation on behalf of black people, and to hand over to them those colonies taken from Germany, which were then redistributed amongst other European nations such as England, the United Kingdom, I should say, and France. This is the first time an organized effort in terms of putting a petition towards the United Nations, which developed out of the League of Nations, about the claims of Africans to reparation. This is how Garvey's philosophy becomes a seminal part of the reparations movement. Various aspects of that have been highlighted by various groups since Garvey, such as the Rastafarians, who have been a constant agitators for not only repatriation but also reparation. And we now see it culminating in the move by the CARICOM countries to form a CARICOM Reparations Commission, out of which the various countries have organized national councils on reparation to make a unified effort in our appeal to the nations of the world for just compensation, for reparatory justice, for the wrongs committed against the African race. I invite you all in Venezuela to organize. We salute the fact that you have shown your support for the concept of repatriation, for the concept of reparation, that you have lent your voice in support to the fact that Europe owes to the Africans who they have spread out across the world and upon whose backs and blood the industrial revolutions of Europe and the economic advances of Europe have occurred and taken place. They sold us, they stole us, they owe us, is the cry of the reparatory movement. And we are organizing. We welcome Venezuela to join us. We welcome the fact that they have shown support such with other countries such as Cuba, and we hope to make a united front in bringing this case before the international court, before the international arena, and to see it through to its just end. We have a long history of struggle, struggling against slavery, struggling against the trade, and then struggling for just recognition for human rights and for civil liberties in many countries throughout this world. As Garvey said, we have an inherent claim and right to the continent of Africa, and that all respecting members of humanity will realize their own debt and their own just due that is owed to the African race, the earliest branch of the human family, and upon whose backs the first civilizations were built. I thank you for your time today, and I wish you the best in your deliberations. Have a good day.